Welcome, everyone. It is Mary Nunley here today with the Create, Engage, Succeed show. Amadeus is not able to join us today, but that's okay because I have a fabulous guest that I would like to introduce to you. So I don't muck up his introduction. Let me introduce to you Joseph Marron, who I met at a conference back in October. He and I've had several conversations since then. We really hit it off, and I'm like, you would be perfect for our show and our audience. So before we get too deep into things, why don't you introduce yourself?
Excellent. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, it was great meeting you, and we did our own live on my channel a couple of weeks ago, and it was so fun to be there with you. So my story is went to college in Oklahoma, got out, joined the Marine Corps, flew jets for the Marine Corps, had a private business, a veterinary business with my wife that we worked on together. And then I started doing financial products and worked for a brokerage house, and as well as helping raise the children, doing avocado farming because we had 400 trees on our property. And actually I'm going through a divorce right now. So what's some of that stuff, some of the assets we had are like cut off to me. And it just really made me think about what is going on in my financial life being cut off from that stuff, and how do I really improve myself? And then where am I right now financially, and taking a look at my mindset and to really improve that. So as I'm going through my own journey around that, and having had all that investment experience and all, because we've owned commercial pieces of property, residential pieces of property, as well as investments and things like that. It's like, there's a lot of self-growth that I've been going through since this divorce started, especially around who I am, what I think, why do I think what I think, and really having a lot more awareness about the decisions I'm making and the thoughts that are going through. So now I have the power to decide what I want to do and how I want to do it. And I'm not just being run by programming anymore. So now I'm bringing that into the financial realm based upon my past experiences. And I'm merging that with the things that I've been learning over the last 2 years about myself and actually how people work. So I'm helping out with another group called Men on Fire Rising. And it works with men to help get out of their heads and into their hearts so they can be the best version of themselves, especially in their relationships. And so this is really what I went to after the divorce started. And it's just been like a godsend for me. But going back to being in the financial part, it's merging that mind and the heart with the finances so that you know exactly, why am I doing this stuff? If I'm sabotaging myself, why am I sabotaging myself, right? If I'm doing great, what are the elements of greatness that I'm doing to keep me going in that direction?
So that's excellent. So
that's a quick intro for you.
I like it. And if we have time, I'm going to get back to how do you go from flying jets to raising avocados, but that will be for later. So as I was listening to you kind of explain your journey a little bit, for many of us, 2020, and it looks like 2021 and even potentially 2022 is going to be a somewhat rocky road financially. And, right. It doesn't matter how well off you are, in addition to the weirdnesses of a pandemic and businesses changing, the whole landscape seems to be changing in terms of how we have careers, how we make money, how do we do that? And you mentioned mindset. So my first question is, especially now as we're moving into the winter holidays, how can somebody who's maybe experiencing some of that trauma that you mentioned, whether it's divorce, sickness, whatever, what are a couple of things that they can do that not only helps get their mindset straight, but can also help them shift their mindset towards their finances?
Right. Thank you. That's a great question. So the first thing is just to realize that there's more than enough. All right. So it's having that abundance mindset and to look around and see, hey, there's a car there, there's a car there. All those cars cost $20,000 a piece, right? And if you go count how much money is around you, there is more than enough to go around. And I'm focusing on money right at this moment because that's what we're kind of talking about. So that the abundance mindset around money is to realize, hey, there is more than enough, okay? And I'm going to get my share of it. Now this goes back into, hey, how are you raised, right? And what were the programming that you got around money that made you have the thoughts that you have right now, if you're not living into that money life that you want? So there's two things. There's first is that through that programming, you probably are not living your best money life. And secondly, you're telling yourself stories that in some ways money wanting money, having money is somewhat of is a non-pure goal, just for better words right now.
Okay.
And we all have to realize that the world we operate in is a world that's permeated with money, right? So before we would go out and hunt and get our food, have our sustenance, take it from the land. But because we are communal in our nature as human beings, and we want to build tribes and bigger tribes, what's happened is we had to barter first, and then we had to give something value that we could exchange on a larger basis. And that's what's happened with money, and that's what it is. So it's all around us. It's part of our world, and we just have to accept it. And we can't beat ourselves down for participating in that world.
Okay. So from a practical standpoint, let's say that let's not say I've lost my job, but let's say my hours have been cut. I work very closely with the hotel restaurant industry. And so a lot of people that I work with are in that scenario. Restaurants are at lower capacity. People aren't dining out as frequently. I want to have this abundance mindset, but I'm also looking at like, okay, my take home pay got cut by 70%. I know that, people will say, oh, we should have an emergency fund. You should cut back on expenses.
Right.
But what can I do from a mindset and maybe what is a behavior or two that I might be able to implement in my daily routine to go, okay, I have enough. There is enough. It's an abundant universe.
Okay, sure. So we're going out of la la land into practical land. Okay,
Yes.
So I hear you. Okay, so
from theory to practice.
right, exactly. So the idea is that you understand. Okay, I'm taking a look at the world I live in. What's going on? So the hotel world, in fact, I had a friend who just went to Las Vegas, and he's like, there's nobody there, right? And I guess evidently the Wynn is only open on the weekends or a couple of days a week.
Right.
So yeah, I totally understand that. And the idea is to, hey, take a look and see what your situation is right now. Take a look, you're going to inventory your assets, right? And part of your assets are your own capabilities to do things. What are you good at? And this is where you would come into play for people too, right? So as I'm taking an inventory of my skills and assets, how can I share myself with the world and get my name out there into the world so that I can generate some business for myself? So,
good point.
YouTube is a great place to go to start looking for some ideas. It's also a place to be careful with too, which and then to first things first. Hey, I got to survive. So I do what it takes to survive. And then I start learning new skills over time so that I can start to thrive. So I can start generating more income. Okay.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So, and to get really practical about it is to understand, hey, okay, I got to focus on income. I don't focus on debt, right? Because the debt's going to hold me into the past. The income is what's going to drive me to the future. So I really, really, really brainstorm, think about, focus on, envision, what's it going to look like for me to generate more income and more income for myself. So that's that. If you want to talk about being practical, that's it.
I like that. And I think many people don't realize that they're an untapped treasure trove. We often just sort of sell ourselves short. Yeah. I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. Versus what can you do? And, are there some skills that you can improve upon and then, whether it's barter or income or whatever. Now, I really like that. And thank you for those practical tips, because I know so many people are struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot easier. It's very easy to say, oh, well, just change your mindset and everything changes. But what's something that I can do today? Well, inventory your skills.
Right.
That was great.
Well, the other thing is to set goals for yourself, but immerse yourself in those goals. Right.
Okay.
And so I'm not just going to set my goal today and think about it next week. It's like, I'm going to set my goals, and you keep tweaking them. Right. But you immerse yourself in your goal, because it's going to pull you through. So there's going to be hard times where you're like, I know I need to go make a phone call to someone, but I'm afraid. Right. Sales call reluctance. And it doesn't matter. It's not necessarily cold call. It's just anything. Being on an interview for a job. Right. Being in a situation where I need to come through and I need to show my best self. And sometimes my self-talk gets me to a point where I really hold back and my best self doesn't come out. And so that's why I talk about immersing yourself in your goals, because you know what, when I think about my child that needs to eat, or I think about the college that I want to pay for, or I think about the house that I want to have instead of, wondering where my next rent paycheck's going to come from, right? So that's, as you immerse yourself in that goal, then you stop focusing on yourself and you can really show up better for yourself and everybody else in your life.
I like that. And, another thing that I've heard, and I've seen it in play in my own life, is that when I also reach out to the community at large, say, how can I help? I know we're both very familiar with Jay Facette, who's like, it's a game of I'll go first. And I have found in my career, both as a corporate employee working in higher ed and also having my own business, when I say I'll go first with no expectation of financial gain or financial reward, I typically have generally have all kinds of really good, exciting things happen to me. Maybe not immediately, but it's like, oh, well, let me call her because she's willing to. So would you say that that's a good strategy for people to try as well?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And it goes back to mindset too, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in an abundance mindset, whether I've blown through my savings or not, but I'm still in a giving frame of mind, then, people react differently to you. Just like showing up with a smile or showing up with a frown in a room, right? One gets you lots more frowns and one gets you lots more smiles. It's the same thing. Okay. It's the same thing when I show up and I'm like, I'm ready to help. Well, guess what? Because you've got your goals set, you're focusing on where you want to be. Guess what? And I'm seeing what's going on out there. So now that's opportunity knocking. And the more open I am and in that abundance mindset, I can really start to see those opportunities. And then, like you said, hey, I show up and I start wanting to give first. Things are going to really start happening for you at a level that you probably didn't expect or could even foresee before. And that's what I recognize in a lot of people, even with myself. It's like, oh, 10-year goal, I have no idea. I have no idea where I'm going to be in 10 years, and then you think about it from the place where you've come from and the place where you are right now, and there's no vision. And that's what I help people do, is I help them start to have a vision about what's possible. And I've been in that place myself where it's like, oh, woe's me. I just can't see it. Right.
I just want to survive. Let me get through the day versus.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're all going to have days like that. But I think you're right. If you've got that longer term goal that you're working towards, it makes it so much easier to get through those rough spots. It's like,
it could just be a 3-month goal, right? It could just be like a 3-month goal. Hey, I just got to get the next 3 months. And once you hit that, bam. And the big thing that a lot of people that I've worked with don't do is they don't celebrate themselves. And I'm probably sure that you've recognized that too in people, is that we just don't celebrate ourselves. I mean,
that is so true.
We tell ourselves things should be a certain way, and until it fits that image perfectly, exactly, which it's never going to do, we don't celebrate ourselves. And then therefore things get harder.
No, that is really valid. And it's very hard. And
yes,
I don't think it's a gender specific thing either. I think just it's a cultural thing. It's very hard. Right. When you think back to how we're raised, I mean, I was raised in a Catholic family, and, one of the things that we were taught is like, if things are going well, just wait for that other shoe to drop, because as soon as things start to go well, and even though I feel like I've gone past that, every time I have a success, I'm like, okay, what's going to happen to take it away? Because it's like, how do you get past that upbringing? That you have? And it's kind of like, no, it doesn't mean it's always going to get bad if something good happens. Right.
Yeah. So that's part of how I help people too. Okay. My Catholic guilt part comes in in that something you did something well, right? And it's like, well, what are you crowing about? That's what you should have been doing anyway. And it's like, okay. So, but going back to the mindset. So here's a story. So when I was a little kid, because we all have these things in our lives that are ingraining us into ways of thinking, and they just get developed, right? I mean, so like just Tony Robbins says, it's like, hey, something happened when you were younger in your life and you weren't in a mature enough place to really handle it. So you had to shoebox it somehow, right? And cope with it somehow. And now whatever action that you took back when you were a child is showing up in a very inappropriate way right now. So with money, so here's an example. So when I was a little kid, there was a pool next door to us, down the street, actually. It was a stagnant pool. The guy wasn't taking care of it. So there was a whole bunch of tadpoles in there. So I jump in there and I grab these tadpoles And so instead of selling lemonade on the corner, I went and took these tadpoles and I started selling them on the corner for $0.25 a piece.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and then my sister must have told my mom on me with my mom. And so my sister shows up and she grabs these tadpoles and says, mom says you can't do this. And she takes off with my tadpoles, right? And so what happened there? Another little piece came in for me to like doubt what I'm doing and what money means, right?
Right.
And so, you know, whatever my mom's fear was around me being on the street selling these tadpoles, and maybe, you know, she didn't want me selling dirty tadpoles or whatever.
Right.
Those thoughts started getting infused into me, and it kept me from being the fullness and full expression of myself that I could be. And we're kind of looking at the big picture, but when it comes to money, that's happening too.
Right. No, and that makes sense. I mean, I think back, like I grew up with Depression era parents. And so there are things that because they grew up without, that filtered over. And so, you know, there are things today that I'm like, wait, why am I even doing this? And so it's being able, I think, to take a step back and also say, why am I doing this? Versus this is the way I was brought up. I have to do this. And I think when it comes to money, that's really important. It's just like, okay, what applied when you were, you know, 20 years old, trying to pay off college loans or something is very different than maybe what you do when you're 40 years old and you have a 6-figure income and, you know, but why are you doing the same thing? So how do you help people overcome that? And, you know, if they wanted to work with you, how do they work with you?
Yeah. So I was helping out my cousin actually a couple of months ago. And so she's had some heart problems. She's a little older, coming up on retirement. And the story she was telling herself was that she just needed to save enough because she was going to pass away when she was 70, right? And she was kind of telling people this. And so we got into what's going on inside of you that you're telling people this stuff? What's going on inside of you that you're thinking this way? How is that restricting you from living your life to the fullness that you want, right? And for her, it was that I feel like I'm not well, and I feel like that I only have enough money really to 70, but she didn't really look at it, right? Because we went deeper into her finances, and it's like she's set up. But the story she was telling, I mean, she's not going to be super rich, right? But she's got all the backstops in place and she's doing well. But the story she's telling herself is that I only have enough till I'm 70. And there was no empirical data to support her belief in what was going on. And she wasn't willing to take a look at it because she was afraid to. And that's what happens to a lot of us. We're frozen where we are because we're afraid to take a look. And that's what I help. I help you get behind with that programming that the game you're running on yourself that's really not helping.
Wow. No, that's powerful because, I agree. I mean, there are times when, you know, as a single parent, I had, you know, not a lot of income coming in. So it's like, I don't want to look at what I owe on my credit cards. You know, I'm just going to pay that minimum. And then when I got past that, I still use those same behaviors. It's like, wait, this is not smart. You know, you need to really just take a look at the numbers. Can't hurt you. The numbers can just tell you a story. And I think for many Americans, we think the numbers are going to hurt us when actually they're just telling a story to us. And we just have to figure out what that story is.
And without looking at the numbers and the stories they tell you, if you're not making good financial decisions, you'll continue to make poor financial decisions. So one of the other ways that I help is like, you know, where do you want to go? Your goals. Where are you right now? What's in the way and keeping you from getting there? And what are those decisions? Let's see. And so when we take a look at, hey, where you are right now you can see now the curtain's pulled back and you can really see. And so the great thing about Man on Fire and the way it's helped me is, because, you know, being Catholic, there's a lot of guilt, right? There's a lot of judgment. And so it's really helped me become a lot more heart-centered when I'm working with people, because I know that we're all going through our stuff. And I know that we all have our past. And for me to sit in judgment on someone is just not fair to them. And it shuts them down. So I'm so thankful for David and Man on Fire and all this stuff for me to be able to speak with someone and show them in a loving way, just like with my cousin. I had her pat herself on the back, and she, you know, I had some assignments that were super simple. suit that took like 5 minutes to do. And so she could have those small wins to feel good about herself. And that's how I help out other people too. It's like, you're here. There's no blame. There's no guilt. There's no shame. There might be a little pain, but we're going to work towards those goals that you're setting for yourself. And we're going to do it incrementally. And we're going to do it in a cheerful way where we celebrate ourselves as often as we can.
Oh, I love that. And I think especially when we're talking finances, money, and debt, especially,
right,
it can become so overwhelming. And, there have been times in my past, my story, where I've just done the happy dance because it's like, I could pay an extra $25 towards that particular credit card. And it's like, and other people are like, yes, so what? You owe $12,000. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. I no longer have people calling me saying, where's my money? I'm now going, I have extra money to give them. And, but I don't think we reward ourselves for those little wins. We just focus on, oh, I'm a loser. Oh, I owe all this money. And, I think to my own story, my parents never really taught us about money or money management. It's like, you're 18, great, go figure it out, versus like, here's what you need to know. And I think many families do the same thing because it's a taboo topic.
Exactly. And they don't feel comfortable about themselves and handling money also. So I don't think a lot of times parents feel like they're in a position to be able to educate on money.
Yeah. So one last question for you, and then I'm going to go back to the Jets and the avocados.
Okay.
If you were to give one piece of advice to the people listening today, whether they're parents or they're empty nesters or they've never had a family, what is your number one thing that you would tell people to do to start getting their life back on a better financial track?
Just be honest with yourself and see where you are right now. Open up all those statements, put it all in one place so that you can see exactly where you are right now. List all your assets, all your liabilities, and see where you are. And now when you have that starting place, you can figure it out. There's no guesswork. There's no doubts. That's where I am. Okay. I'm not going to shame, blame, and guilt myself. That's where I am right now. And I resolve, if it's not a great place, I resolve not to be there anymore. And now we can take steps. Now we can go places. But as long as it's, I think this and I believe that, we can't work with that. And when I work with people, it's like there's an understanding between us that I'm a coach, right? I'm not a financial planner. So you're going to tell me what you want, and I'm going to hold you accountable to get there.
Okay.
You're not going to hand me your money and I'm going to go invest it. And then you tell me what you want in investment wise, because you haven't researched it. Someone you heard at the office, or you got a pump and dump letter from someone. We're going to talk about stuff and you're going to tell me what you want, and I'm going to help you get there. Now, if you're like, Joe, this is too much right now for me, then I'll dial it back a little bit as far as you tell me the you tell me the rate you want to get there. Right. And I'll turn up the pressure, turn down the pressure for whatever you can take.
So you're more like a financial accountability coach to help people achieve their financial dreams versus somebody who's going to, like you said, you're not an investment broker. You're there by their side to say, you know what? Okay, so you slipped. What can we do to bring you back up?
Right.
I think of my son.
So I also help where you are, get a budget together, understand how the financial world works, due diligence around any investment that you want to do, so that you know whether you should get into that investment or not. And then that's based upon your whole past story and your goals, where you want to go to, right? So do you want to invest in real estate? Do you want to invest in the stock market? Do you want to do private placement memorandums if you're an accredited investor? We'll talk about that, and I'm there by your side. I have some trusted professionals in different areas, insurance, estate planning. I do have a broker friend that if you actually want to broker, you can do that. I have business exit planners. If you own a business and you're trying to figure out how to get your business in a situation where you can exit it and actually make a profit of it, things like that. So I'm there to be your coach.
And it sounds like you're also there to ask that hard question of why. So like, Gary, why do you want to invest in real estate? Well, because I was listening to this podcast. Okay, but why do you want to invest in real estate? Well, because I was.
It's just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle. And if the question is, what are you willing to, and everything's a trade-off in life, right? It's a trade-off of energy, a trade-off of time, a trade-off of effort. And so what are you willing to do that? right? And so with real estate, you have to be willing to be on your computer, on your phone, looking at properties as they come up. If you're in an area where the properties are, to drive by properties all the time. So I'm a Grant Cardone licensee also, and I believe in a lot of his philosophy around money. And the philosophy is that I look for ways to earn more money, and then I put on multiple streams of income that are synergistic with that part. And then I invest in myself and my education, okay, before I think about investing in anything else. And I save to invest. And his criteria is, hey, you have $100,000 in savings before you're ready to go actually invest in a vehicle.
No, that makes sense.
So, yeah, and then what happens is people are like, oh, that's a long time. Well, what are you doing in that whole time? You're educating yourself about that vehicle that you want to get into, so that when you invest that $100,000, you're not going to lose it. You're like super smart about it. Now, there's other ways we could do it too, right? We could leverage it, and as you get smarter, we can talk about that. But that's just kind of a very basic groundwork.
I think the other piece of that is, so many people jump into something, and my thing is, if it seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So that's where you want to have that trusted advisor or coach where you can ask those questions. Is like, hey, Joe, I was, this opportunity was presented to me. I've made my list of pros and cons, but I've got some questions. Would you help me think this through? Versus, yeah, I'm just going to go give this guy that I met on the street corner $50,000.
Right, exactly.
Because he said I'm going to be a millionaire, and I'm like, and I'll buy a lottery.
And he seemed trustworthy too. So
that's right. And there's a lot, and I'm not saying that can't happen, but I think the service that you provide is to help us as people think through, like, okay, is this really that great? Is it, what are the potential risks? Do I have $50,000 that I can invest? If I lose it all, will I still be okay? And I think sometimes we just see that opportunity and don't walk back and say, it's like when I started my own business, I made sure that I had contracts lined up before I just quit my job.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, I can keep a roof over my head for at least 6 months if I quit my job tomorrow, versus I don't like my job, I'm going to just quit. Now, what am I going to do? And
the thing, here's the important point. You knew your industry, right? And you knew how things worked. And so you saw an opportunity and you took it based upon knowledge. You didn't see an opportunity and took it based upon a belief system.
Right. Yeah. It was, I've done this for this many years. I know what I know. Yeah. And that's a valid point too. It's like, again, that knowledge, the information, knowledge is power, like they used to say back in the 70s. And that's key. So I know we're almost out of time. Two quick questions. Question number one. Jets and avocado farming. How do those go together?
Well, so I got out of the Marine Corps, and we bought a house that had 400 avocado trees on it.
Okay.
And so actually I was flying for the reserves, and we were just taking care of the grove, right? So our best year, we had 77,000 pounds off those 400 trees, and we sold it to a wholesaler. And so there's a whole art and science around avocado trees and timing the market. And so at the time, there was no Mexican or Chilean avocados on the market, so the prices were better. Anyway, so I can go into that whole story too. So
no, but that's really
all I can tell you though, the life of a farmer is not easy, period.
Well, and yes, I have friends that are farmers, and it is definitely not an easy life, but it's what I find really interesting is, again, you're one of those folks that I tend to attract into my life that have multiple and varied careers. It's not like I'm just doing this one thing. It's like I did this, and then I went to the Marines, and then I raised avocados, and now, which goes back to that knowledge piece that you were mentioning too. It's like, even though there doesn't seem to be a link, there's still connections. Things that you learned flying jets about taking risk and stuff probably apply to being a farmer. And it's like, how do you tie it together?
Right. And the biggest part is just like you talked about transitioning your business, is you have to have an educational foundation, and you have to know how the system works.
Right.
Before you really have enough confidence. And that's what I really help people do financially, is to get confidence around their money. I mean, if someone wants to just hand their money to a broker and let them handle it, that's not my client. That's not my ideal client. My ideal client is someone that's like, you know what, I know I can do better. I hear so much stuff out there. I have money to invest, but I don't even know what to do with it. So it's just sitting in a bank account, right? Or it's someone that's like, hey, I know, I don't really know how things work, and it scares me, and it just, and so, and I know that I'm sabotaging myself, and I want to take control of my own money.
I
So
like
that's who I help.
that sounds like so many people that I know. And my last question, which I ask all of our guests, is
Okay.
what do you have coming up on the horizon? So that, what are you excited about? What project or launch or course, or what do you have that you're really excited about that people might want to reach out to you and ask you about?
Well, just working one-on-one with people is like awesome. I love it. And being able to just see the change and transformation in their lives. And then I'm hopefully going to be working with you here and putting a course together.
Awesome. I look forward to that.
In the next few months, that walks people through the process so that they can do it. They can check it out on their own. If they, if they're like, hey, I don't really feel like I want someone, blowing the whistle at me and having me run sprints, right?
Yeah.
they just want to kind of do it on their own. Yeah. That's it. That's what I got going on.
And that's great. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing the course that you create and the way that you're helping people. And so if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what is the easiest way? Because I'll put that in the show notes too. Is it to follow you on Facebook? Is it?
Yeah, I'll give you the link to my Facebook, because that's, I'm growing traffic organically through Facebook. And so, and then they can just send me a little private message, and we can start a conversation around where they are, what they want, and how we can work together.
That's fantastic. So everyone, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Create, Engage, Succeed. I hope you learned as much from Joseph as I did, because it's been a fascinating conversation, and we'll see you back next week. Thanks, everyone.